Okay. So yesterday we had seen we had done with the postulates of Bohr's postulates. Now, what is the postulates of Bohr? The first one we had seen is that it can explain only for one electron system. It can explain the structure of one electron system. One electron system means the system or the species containing only one electron. There is only one atom, only one neutral atom which has got one electron, and that is hydrogen. So it can explain only of hydrogen, but that does not mean it can explain only of hydrogen. It can explain some other species, but it can explain the structure of some other species. But certainly that species are not atoms. That is not the structure of an atom. What species? It can explain about He plus. What is He plus? He, helium, means there are two electrons. Helium means there are two electrons, but if it becomes He plus, one electron is removed. So there is in He plus, how many electron is there? Only one electron is there. That is why I am telling over here that it can explain only one electron system. Okay, it can explain the structure of Li2 plus. What is Li2 plus? Li has got 3 electrons, lithium has got 3 electrons. In the neutral condition, if it becomes a 2 plus, it will have 2 plus means 2 electrons are going away. Out of 3, 2 are going away, so only 1 electron is remaining. That means the species where only one electron is present, the Bohr's theory or the Bohr's postulate can explain that particular structure. But obviously we know that is only one atom, and that atom is hydrogen. So that's the first thing. So that is you can say it as postulate also, you can say it as limitation also. Okay, so it can explain only for one electron system. Okay, for hydrogen, whatever expression we had written, see, we had written the expression for energy for hydrogen, En equal to, if you can remember, we had write it down yesterday, 2.18 into 10 to the power minus 18 into 1 by n square joule. Okay, this much is the energy of nth level we had written. Okay, but if it is something else, one electron system, for example helium positive or lithium 2 positive, this expression changes little bit. How it changes? Not, I should not say changes, we write it in a changed form. If we use the second expression for the hydrogen also, that's absolutely correct. So that is minus 2.18, in a different way we express, but that's all. 10 to the power minus 18 into z square by n square, that much is joule. Z is the atomic number. Z is the atomic number. In case of hydrogen, atomic number is 1. So it is 1 square by n square. So this is the equation. That is in case of hydrogen. But in case of He plus, atomic number means what? Atomic number means number of protons, right? The number of proton in He is 2. So it will be 2 square by n square. In case of lithium, the atomic number is 3. So it will be 3 square by n square. But in case of hydrogen, it is 1 square. Okay, so we can write in general what? We can write in general z square. Z is the atomic number divided by n square. Okay, so that's the first postulate. The second postulate is that the electron in the stationary circular paths surrounding the nucleus are, moving in the surrounding the nucleus, and they are called orbits. What he told? He told electron, not electrons. I should not say electrons, because you had studied about electrons in 9th and 10th, but that is not electron. What he told, that the nucleus is there. Yesterday only I discussed about this. The nucleus is there. Then there are certain circular paths, fixed circular paths, which are known as orbits, so where the electron can move. This is first orbit, second orbit, third orbit, and so on. The circular paths are there. Now each circular path has angular momentum. The electron has got the angular momentum. Momentum is what? Momentum is m into v, mass into velocity. But angular momentum means when it is moving in a circular path, the angular momentum is mass into velocity into the radius. Suppose if it is moving in this is the radius. Moving in this circle, this is the radius. So angular momentum is mvr. And that is actually an integral multiple of h by 2 pi. What is integral multiple? it may be h by 2 pi for the first level, first orbit. For the second orbit it is 2h by 2 pi. For the third it is 3h by 2 pi. For the fourth it is 4h by 2 pi. Okay, that is why we call it as an integral multiple of h by 2 pi. So in general we write nh by 2 pi, where the value of n is equal to what? N is equal to 1, 2, 3, etc. Yes, and this value of n, this value of n, okay, is called principal quantum number. Principal, not principle. It is principal. Okay, Sonika ma'am. Okay, I don't know whether she is there in the class or not. If she is there, she will teach me. Principal quantum number. Okay, principal quantum number, that is n. Okay, principal quantum number of the principal quantum number of what? Principal quantum number of the atom, which is denoted by 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So that's nothing but what I told yesterday. Yesterday I used the term levels. First level, second level, third level, fourth level. That is what is denoted by n, and n is nothing but we call it principal quantum number. Actually we will come to this quantum number, which is the main concept actually of the atomic structure. This is what he told. Okay, so that is the main thing of the Bohr's postulates, that he told that it is explained for the only one electron system. Second, the electrons are moving in certain circular paths, fixed circular paths surrounding the nucleus, and that fixed circular paths has got what? Has got the angular momentum which is equal to integral multiplication of h by 2 pi, that is nh. mvr is equal to nh by 2 pi. mvr is equal to nh by 2 pi. Okay, these are the Bohr's postulates mainly. Now what is the limitation? Again I am saying you that the first postulate itself is the limitation, that it can explain only for the one electron system, it cannot explain for the multi-electron system. The second limitation that you must understand, okay, just understand it. It's already written. The second important, there are so many limitations actually. The second important limitation is, we had seen about the atomic spectra, that is line spectra, discrete spectra. So if we take it in the photographic plate, we know that there are lines. I'm just considering one line. Clear? Now if the same atomic spectra is taken under the influence of magnetic field or electric field, if the same atomic spectra of the hydrogen atom is taken under the influence of electric field or magnetic field, okay, what happens? This spectral line is splitted up. It is splitted up into two parts, or it is splitted up into three parts. It is splitted up into three parts. Just it becomes splitted up. Okay, splitted up into two or splitted up into three, with the application of what? With the application of electric field and magnetic field. Okay, electric field or magnetic field. That splitting up into two parts is called doublet formation. From the word itself you can understand that. Doublet formation. The splitting up into three parts is called triplet formation. So doublet or triplets are formed due to the influence of electric or magnetic field. This was observed by the electric field phenomenon was observed by a scientist called Stark. The electric field phenomenon was observed by a scientist called Stark, and hence this splitting up into doublet and triplet due to the electric field is called Stark effect. Okay, whereas the one which is happening because of the magnetic field, means the splitting up of the spectral line due to the magnetic field, was observed by Zeeman, and hence this particular effect of splitting up of the spectral line into doublet or triplet because of the magnetic field was actually known as, or is known as, the Zeeman effect. Okay, so Zeeman effect and Stark effect cannot be explained by the Bohr's theory. Here comes the ending, I should say, of Bohr's theory. Okay, Bohr's theory ends here only. Okay, now we have to think something else, because this cannot explain anything. Literally, it cannot explain anything. Hence comes the next approach, the next approach. This approach is completely, nullified. This approach of explaining the structure of atom is completely nullified, completely discarded. The next approach came, and the next approach is called quantum mechanical approach. Quantum mechanical approach. Till now, the approach we were trying to explain was actually the basic theory, and that was called classical approach, or classical theory approach, or classical mechanics approach. But with that approach we are failures. We failed to explain the structure of atom. Hence comes the approach which is known as quantum mechanical approach. Okay, quantum mechanical approach. This quantum mechanics is a very, very big thing. So obviously we are not going to study quantum mechanics in every detail. Certainly not. Certainly not. We are not going to study quantum mechanics in every detail. What we are going to know is that whatever is needed for us, that much quantum mechanics we are going to know, just the basic of it. Okay. But before starting to the quantum mechanics, we must know that this particular approach was started by mainly two theories. The first theory is called de Broglie's. We write it like this. I don't know why they write it D small. The Dutch people like that only. De Broglie's dual nature of electromagnetic radiation. Dual nature of electromagnetic radiation. De Broglie's dual nature of electromagnetic radiation. What is de Broglie's dual nature? Dual nature of EMR, electromagnetic radiation. We know we tried to explain electromagnetic radiation by two ways. First, we tried to explain by considering this as continuous wave. Second, we tried to explain some phenomena could be explained by that, some phenomena couldn't be explained by that. Those like photoelectric effect, which we explained by considering them as particle. So what is it? Is it a wave? Is it a particle? Hence comes de Broglie. He told it shows both the characters. It shows both the character. It shows the particle character as well as the wave character. That is what is known as dual nature. And you won't believe that he is the only scientist whose thesis paper was just one page thesis paper, and he got Nobel Prize for that. He got Nobel Prize for that. Now if we think so, it's very easy. But whenever he thought of this concept, that concept was itself the measurement for the Nobel laureate. Okay. What he told, again, the same thing I'm saying. What he told is that the electromagnetic radiation shows both nature, the particle nature as well as what? As well as the wave nature. So what he did, he just equated two equations simply. Particle nature he took from Einstein's equation. What is Einstein's equation for relativity? All of us know that E is equal to mc square. Okay, where m is mass. Whenever the term mass is involved, we are telling of particle. Clear? So this is particle nature, and wave nature he took. So obviously this is coming from Einstein's equation. And another nature, that is wave nature, he took from Planck's equation. What is Planck's equation? E is equal to h nu, or we can write it equal to h into c by lambda. Nu is what? Nu is nothing but c by lambda. So it is all wavelength and frequency. It is related to wavelength, means it's a wave nature. So we are just taking this. He just took these two equations and he equated it. Obviously he wrote something before that. That is why I am telling one page. Okay, he just equated these two. What he got? mc square is equal to hc by lambda. Yes, mc square is equal to hc by lambda. So if we just simplify it, lambda should be equal to, lambda is coming over this side. Okay, lambda is equal to, you see what is coming? H divided by mc. One of the c will be cancelled out. Lambda is equal to h by mc. This is a equation where you see the particle nature is there. How can you identify the particle nature? Because the mass is there, mass is involved over here, and it has got also the wave nature. How can you identify the wave nature is there? Because the lambda is there. So this particular equation is showing the dual nature of electromagnetic radiation, that is both particle nature as well as the wave nature. Okay. Now this, whenever I am writing C, that is velocity of light, it is applicable for EMR, okay, electromagnetic radiation. But he told no, it is applicable for any substance. It is applicable even for the macroscopic substances also. Macroscopic substances means, suppose just an example I am saying, suppose a cricket ball. We are throwing a cricket ball. If I throw a cricket ball, we know the movement of the cricket ball will be like this, right? If any particle is projected, the movement of the particle will be simply like this. Okay, but what he told, according to the theory, he told that the movement of the particle won't be like this. The movement of any particle doesn't matter whether it is microscopic, subatomic particle or macroscopic particle, the movement of the particle will be like this. Means it is moving, but moving like a wave. So do you see a cricket ball is moving like this? No, na? Why can't we see that the cricket ball is not moving like this? If you calculate now the same thing, now for the macroscopic particle, obviously this equation will be different. For macroscopic particle, the equation will be lambda is equal to h by mv now. Because the velocity of the macroscopic particle is certainly not equal to the velocity of what? Velocity of light. It has got any velocity. Now I will give you two homeworks, you will do that and you will tell me that why that is not seen in case of cricket ball, but it is significant, I should say, in case of electrons. Okay, significance in case of electrons, but not significant. This de Broglie's equation is not significant in case of cricket ball. So what I want to conclude is that this de Broglie's equation or de Broglie's dual nature is significant very much in case of microscopic particles, microscopic subatomic particles, whereas in case of macroscopic particles, this is completely insignificant. Okay, just write down a question. I am just asking you a question. Write it down, note it down. You will solve it at home, and tomorrow you will tell me that why. That will be your thought process, your thinking process should begin now. Okay, right. An electron, an electron, an electron, an electron. Right, an electron right, an electron moves with the speed of light. An electron moves with the speed of light. What is its wavelength? What is its wavelength? That's the first question. And the second question is a cricket ball of mass, 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 a cricket ball of mass 100 gram, a cricket ball of mass 100 gram is moving with a velocity of velocity of 150 kilometer per hour. 150 kilometer per hour. Full stop. Calculate its wavelength. Calculate its wavelength. I want the answers of this. That will be your homework. But I am moving now into the second point. I told to start with quantum mechanical approach, which I don't think we'll be able to do that. To start. Yes?
Sir, could you please repeat the first question?
An electron is moving with the velocity of light. An electron is moving with the velocity of light. Calculate its wavelength. Calculate its wavelength. That's the first one. And the second question is, a cricket ball of 100 gram mass is moving with a velocity of 150 kilometer per hour. 150 kilometer per hour. What is its wavelength? Okay. So just calculate two wavelengths. As I told, the quantum mechanical approach starts with two theories. The first theory we studied, the first theory is what? First theory is the de Broglie's dual nature. The second one is called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. What he told, this was a completely thought experiment. So there are two types of experiments, one is laboratory experiment, which we perform, another one is thought experiment, which we think. This is one kind of thought experiment. This Heisenberg's uncertainty principle was a thought experiment, but afterwards it has been found that this is very much applicable to explain the facts, okay, explain the observations. So it is accepted. It is not that any thought experiment can be accepted. It has to explain the facts, then only it will be accepted. So Heisenberg's uncertainty principle was a thought experiment. He said in his principle that for a microscopic moving particle, please understand it, microscopic moving particle, we cannot find out the position and the velocity. We cannot find out the position and the velocity simultaneously and accurately. We cannot find out the position and the velocity simultaneously and accurately. I don't know whether you have understood that or not.